leaving Kima.
I think we're gonna leave Kima, but
It's only been 4 months.
A new lead and new clues bring on a brand new search for Lynette Hooker nearly 2 months after her husband said she went missing at sea. And now Brian Hooker's story is under the microscope. I'll tell you why. I'm Angenette Levy, and this is Crime Fix. It's been 8 agonizing weeks for Lynette Hooker's family and friends. The mother, daughter, and wife has been missing, and her husband, Brian Hooker, has been in the crosshairs of law enforcement, although he hasn't been charged with a crime. It was April 5th when Brian Hooker reported that he and his wife, Lynette, were separated when she fell off their dinghy and was swept away in a current with the keys to their boat, Soulmate.
We're finally leaving Kima.
I think we're gonna leave Kima, but
It's only been 4 months.
The couple loved to sail and even lived on their sailboat. They documented their adventures on a TikTok account, The Sailing Hookers, and even on YouTube.
Day 2 of crossing the Gulf of Mexico.
They did it all: sailing, scuba diving, paddleboarding. On April 4th, the Hookers were on the water in the Sea of Abaco in the Bahamas. Investigators said Brian Hooker claimed he was forced to paddle back to shore and call for help after he and Lynette were separated. Brian was detained and questioned in connection with Lynette's disappearance, but Bahamian authorities released him without charging him. Brian Hooker has denied any wrongdoing in Lynette's disappearance. I want to be crystal clear about that. Messages surfaced that revealed that Brian Hooker had told friends what happened when he and Lynette were separated. A friend wrote, "Did we just see y'all on the news? ABC World News said Lynette fell off the boat." Hooker wrote back, "Yes, brother, I'm afraid so. Off the dinghy and some choppy seeds on the way back to the sailboat. The wind blew me away from her and she swam towards the sailboat and we lost sight of each other pretty quickly as it was just about sundown. I drifted and tried to paddle with one oar for the next 7 hours until I washed up behind the shore of the next island over and was able to get some help. Finally, we are still searching. A lot is going on right now, but I thank you for checking on us. Being on the news is a huge burden, and I just had my first ever news organization call me a few minutes ago." The friend responded, "You are in our prayers." Hooker responded, "Thank you, friend. Our family is in hell right now. Search and rescue just called and said they had searched a bunch of areas today and no joy. They are going back out tomorrow, but a storm is coming in Wednesday." Brian Hooker also made a phone call to a friend that was posted online.
She basically just bounced off the dinghy in the middle of a little blow, like 20-some knot winds that popped up, and on a half mile maybe trip back to the dinghy, and single thing failed. Every single thing. We weren't wearing life jackets. Tipsy. It was sundown, and the sun set like basically 10 minutes after she fell over. Dinghy key over with her because it wasn't clipped to anything or anybody, and she had the spare dinghy key in her dry bag, which was with her.
But Lynette's daughter, Carly Aylesworth, has been skeptical of her stepfather's story from the start. She spoke to Law&Crime in April.
I think the only thing they have evidence of is just text messages stating past relationship issues, and just right now it's just like hearsay instead of actual proof. But I don't know if my grandma or my mom's friend has more proof, because my mom never confided in me in relationship problems as much. I just said that they have had a rocky relationship. I told the Coast Guard this when we talked, and I said the relationship has been rocky and it gets worse when they drink. So I'm just concerned that he made threats in the past. So I'm just trying to make sure that his anger didn't overtake him and he's done something that he can't undo. So I just want to make sure that it was just a freak accident before I think my suspicions are true.
Carly Aylesworth claimed that Brian Hooker could be violent when he drank.
I have heard from other friends from hers that she stated that it's not safe to be with him, because when he gets angry, he can get scary and violent. I haven't seen him like full force hit anybody, but he does go for the neck and chokes. So, yeah.
And you've seen that.
I've witnessed him do it to his daughter before.
So it sounds like Carly Aylesworth is not buying what her stepfather is selling, and it appears that the U.S. Coast Guard isn't either. On May 14th, the Coast Guard announced that agents with the investigations unit had seized the Hooker sailboat Soulmate. The Coast Guard posted photos showing agents seizing Soulmate as part of its active criminal investigation. A press release said the boat was seized 40 nautical miles off the coast of Melbourne, Florida, during a complex surveillance and interdiction operation. Now, that was on May 14th, and now, about 2 weeks later, CBS News is quoting a source with knowledge of the investigation saying Brian Hooker's story is not lining up with the evidence that investigators have collected and analyzed. CBS News reports that Bahamian authorities have granted the Coast Guard permission to search in an area of the Sea of Abaco that hadn't been previously searched after GPS data from Soulmate appeared to tell a different story than Brian Hooker told. NBC News quoted a source as saying divers searched the wrong area of the Sea of Abaco based on what Brian Hooker told them. And now the divers are planning to go back to the right area based on the GPS data collected from Soulmate. I reached out to the Coast Guard. A spokesperson would not comment on these reports, citing the ongoing criminal investigation. So to discuss all of this, I want to bring in Alex Beer. He is a forensic diver. He has done this type of thing before, searching underwater in criminal cases. So thank you so much, Alex, for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
What are your thoughts on this new information we're getting from news reports that the Coast Guard apparently has found evidence in GPS data that shows that Brian Hooker's story is not lining up with the GPS data? The news reports are saying the wrong area was searched because of what he said. Now they're going to go back and search another area about 25 feet underwater. What are your thoughts on that?
I'm not surprised. CGIS, the Coast Guard Investigation Service, does a wonderful job. They're a very talented group. So I'm not surprised that they found some discrepancies and that they were able to get more information out of the electronics. I think that it's always been a question and certainly a focus of the investigation. And now that they have it, I'm not surprised. I don't think that the time delay is helping them. You know, we're two months, I guess,
Right.
from the incident. And that's certainly not going to make it easier. That'll definitely make it more challenging for them.
And that was going to be my next question. We're 8 weeks out from Lynette going missing. And so this water, if let's say it was choppy enough as Brian Hooker claimed for her to be separated from him, she would have gone underwater. Let's say she, heaven forbid, drowned and went underwater. She would have sunk to the bottom. And then at some point, nature takes its course. Tell us basically what happens when somebody drowns, especially in an ocean or a sea that is choppy.
Yeah, there's a phenomenon called body refloat, where typically somebody who drowns or somebody who is sunk to the bottom or whatever the case may be, if they go to the bottom, eventually the body begins to decompose. And the factors that play a role in that can be body type, what they ate, clothing they're wearing, temperature of the water, depth of the water. There's a lot of factors that play there that will determine how quickly that starts to happen. If it's deep enough, they may never refloat, because as your body decomposes and those gases build up, they make you buoyant again. At a certain depth, the pressure is too great for that to be overcome. So depending on depth, I mean, if it's 25 feet, that's not deep enough, but and the time frame on that there in the Bahamas with the warm water wouldn't be that long. And that's not accounting for things like predation animals and wildlife that would be, for lack of a better term, feeding there or possibly causing more damage affecting that as well.
What's interesting to me is the timeline here.
Mm-hmm.
May 14th, the Coast Guard announces that they've seized Soulmate. And now we're coming up on the 2-week mark of that. We're just past the 2-week mark, where these reports are coming out that they've got GPS data that is showing that Brian Hooker, his story is not lining up with the GPS data. So they're going to search another area. The Coast Guard has been granted permission, according to the news reports, by the Bahamian government to come back in and send divers in and search another area.
Sure.
So I'm sure they are examining everything on that boat, Soulmate. There was another report earlier on about an infrared camera
Mm-hmm.
on the boat that may have been examined. I mean, these boats, I would assume, are equipped with all kinds of equipment that are storing data constantly. Then you have Brian Hooker's phone, too, that
Mm-hmm.
could be transmitting data as well.
Yeah, that type of investigation with electronics and cameras and memory cards, and it takes time, and it takes a incredibly skilled group of people that can go in there and sort of dig that information out. And I'm sure that's what they're doing. I mean, that is probably a focus of their investigation. That it's not, that will give them hopefully some area to zero in on, and then what they do from there. The Coast Guard will do things like surface searches, like they do in search and rescues, where they'll take weather information and data based on currents and tides, winds, weather patterns, on where they think that person could have ended up if they did float on the surface, and they're very good at that. And then from an underwater perspective, that stuff doesn't move around as much. Anything that may be down there is likely to still be there. And I don't know. I know we do. The team that I run here in Florida, we've done dives for the Coast Guard because here in our area they don't have divers, and I'm sure that they'll bring in a group that they need and all the personnel that they need to do the underwater aspect of it, to at least check the area to see if they can find anything that would indicate that she was there at one point.
If you get the call from the Coast Guard Investigative Services and they're like, "Hey, Alex, we're going to send you down to the Bahamas,
Mm-hmm.
and we want you to go do a dive and search and see what you can find." Talk to me about what goes in through your mind when you get that call and what you're up against.
Well, I think the first thing is assembling the team, right? So getting the right group together. There are people that are naturally gifted divers that on my team that are very, very good at finding stuff, and that's through training and just through experience. So I mean, putting the team together, what are we going to want to bring? What kind of not knowing the area. Things like underwater diver propulsion vehicles to do larger searches without as much effort, so you're not burning through your air quite as much trying to kick. And then just getting a lay of that, getting a lay of the land and the water, and seeing what you're dealing with, and then formulating the plan. How are we going to search this? Are we going to probably just grid it out and do one section at a time and start eliminating piece by piece and moving that grid and going wider and wider until we've exhausted every effort to make a location of any type of evidence related to the case.
This is going to be a challenge, though. I mean, as we mentioned, we're 8 weeks out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the likelihood of finding anything, I mean, time is of the essence in a case like this. So the likelihood of finding anything, Lynette could still be underwater. I mean, it is possible. We saw what happened in the Lacey Peterson case.
Sure.
Different waterway, though.
Yeah, for sure.
Different circumstances. They believed she was weighted down in that case. We don't really know all of the circumstances surrounding this. We have Brian Hooker's story,
Mm-hmm.
and that's all we know. We don't know anything else that could have happened here. We just have speculation and suspicions about what could have happened. So, I mean, what's the likelihood that she is still underwater and that they will find something?
It's really hard to say. It is. You're right. The time has not helped in this investigation as far as locating anything. That's not to say that it's not there, but it certainly hasn't made it any easier. I mean, at this point, in warm tropical ocean water, you'd be looking for bones, not for anything else. If it wasn't moved, or if in fact she's in the water. That's not to say that she's not. But different body of water than Lacey Peterson. We've done cold cases here that were 50 years old where we recovered, the bones and remains of victims, but they were in a canal. They weren't going to go anywhere. They were inside a car and sort of contained. Um, but it is not impossible, but it is definitely more difficult for sure.
There's also a possibility that Brian Hooker's story is just not true,
Well,
and
for sure, yeah.
that she is not in the water.
Yep.
She could be elsewhere. We don't know that, but they must have a suspicion that she is in the water if they're sending the divers back in, or is it possible they're just eliminating that space?
I think you want to exhaust everything to the best of your abilities. I know that people are frustrated. I know that everybody wants answers, and so I think from a law enforcement investigative standpoint, you want to exhaust every angle that you can to say that you've done absolutely all that you can. Um, my personal opinion is I don't see why you would have done anything on land in the Bahamas where it's a small island chains with not a lot of space, like burying somebody or something like that. That's much easier. It's my experience that when people want to get rid of something here in Florida, they throw it into if it's a firearm used in a crime, they throw it into the lake or into the canal, thinking, well, nobody's ever going to find that. But if you have the right information and you have a good place to start, and that's accurate, you have a very good likelihood of recovering those things. Now, GPS location in and of itself is great. It's a starting point, but it's a general location. That's much different than I know it was right here. And we've had cases like that where somebody has said, listen, I was standing here, I threw it there, and we go in 10 feet of water with zero visibility, and there it is. Like it didn't move. If she floated up, if that happened, then you're subjected to all kinds of other things. And with the Gulf Stream and everything else, that's a huge area. And so I don't want to say that it's not possible, but you're right that the likelihood is pretty small.
There was a several hour kind of gap here
Mhm.
between Brian Hooker and Lynette leaving on the dinghy, and then when he reported her,
Yeah,
reported this incident, this
sure.
distress that she was missing. So there is another possibility here. I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, but there is a possibility that she is weighted down and she is under there. That is a possibility.
It is a possibility, and I think you got to take the last known GPS location that you may have, put a pin there, take the time frame, mark out how much distance can you cover in that time frame with a string, and draw a big circle. And somewhere in that circle is where that could have happened. That's a 9 hours, even on a sailboat that does 6 knots, say under motor power. That's a big area. But that's your start point. And then you work your way out from there. And it's going to take a tremendous amount of resources and time. And that's the job. That's what you're there to do. At some point, I'm sure that they're going to they'll call it and have to move forward with what they have. But that's part of the problem, is that it's such a big area to cover.
What about using side scan sonar? Before you're doing the dive, or is that not going to work in a situation like this?
No, 2 months ago, maybe. Some people, sonar is great. It's an excellent tool. Much better for finding large objects than for finding people in a big open body of water. If you're in a canal with side scan sonar, that's a different story. It's a very confined space, and that image sort of jumps off the screen at you. In open ocean searches with side scan sonar, it's really not as useful. The other thing about sonar is it gives you a better return off of a hard object. So metal, a car, a boat, something like a sunk item, it gives you a very sharp, clear return. Sonar does not give great returns off of human bodies, especially after 2 months. Right in the beginning, yes, but then anybody who's never worked with sonar, it's not like it jumps off the page like there is a person. Sometimes it's just a little thing that stands out against all other things, and you go, what is that? And then you still have to visually send a diver down there to confirm it's this or it's that. So I think at this point, I don't think side scan sonar would do you a whole lot of good.
Well, I will be interested to see what comes of this, if anything, and I know you will too, Alex.
So will I. I don't know any of the players in the investigation, but I do and have worked with CGIS before. They're an incredibly talented group. They know the challenges ahead of them, and I suspect that they realize that this is going to be a difficult undertaking. But it's doable. It's just going to take a lot of cooperation and a lot of hard work. So, and I know that they're up for that, but it is going to be a challenge to the divers and to the investigators alike.
No doubt. I mean, 2 months out, it's, as I said, and as you know, time is of the essence.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I so appreciate your time.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Anyone with information about Lynette Hooker's disappearance is asked to contact the Coast Guard Investigative Unit. And that's it for this episode of Crime Fix. I'm Angenette Levy. Thanks so much for being with me. I'll see you back here next time.